When I was about 8 years old, my mother made a particularly good lunch: baked chicken with rice and avocado. She had made more than we needed, so she asked if I wanted to take the leftovers to school the next day as sandwich. I was immediately excited. Yes, I said, one chicken sandwich, one avocado sandwich, and one rice sandwich. No, 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 she said. No way. I mean, rice sandwich, that's stupid. No, just chicken and avocado. Of course, I insisted strongly, because for me, the whole point of the game, because it was a game, the game of turning lunch into sandwiches, the point was that every element will become a sandwich. The rice was part of the lunch, so the rice had to be part of the game. That was the logic. That was the fun. But the adult world won, and I never had my rice sandwich. I thought about that moment for years afterwards, not because of the sandwich, but because of what happened in it. A child completely absorbed in a creative game, following its internal logic with total seriousness, and an adult not understanding the game and shutting it down with a single word: no. It was the first time I understood that creativity and the rules of the adult world were going to have a complicated relationship. Time passed. I turned more or less 12 or 13 years old, and my cousin and I started playing tap football. It was a game I learned from a friend of mine. You collected metal bottle caps, placed small cutout paper jerseys inside them with the names of the players, and played matches on the floor with a little piece of plastic as a ball. We had several teams each, and we organized tournaments with other friends, so it was a big, big deal. We were taking it very seriously. The problem started a couple of years later. We were already around 15 years old, and by that time, as you can imagine, we were also starting to like girls. We had quinceañeros almost every weekend, so we were dressing up and trying to act cool. And tap football, played on the floor of someone's living room with bottle caps, was the opposite of cool, especially for my cousin who was 1 year older than me. So we started hiding it. We played in secret at my house, mostly where it was safe, but sometimes we played at my cousin's house. And the danger was that his sister, who was in his same class at school, could potentially appear with some of her class's girlfriends. But we thought it was too improbable, so we used to risk it anyways. Until one afternoon, while we were playing passionately a match at his place, the door opened, and there she was, his sister with two girls from his class. Girls that he was going to see the next day at school. Girls that were going to know what he does at home. So that was very, very bad. My cousin barely looked up. He just said hello from the floor as if nothing was happening and kept playing in silence. I think that was the last time we played tap football. Nobody told us to stop. Nobody punished us. We punished ourselves because we have absorbed somewhere along the way the idea that playing seriously was something to be ashamed of. And that is exactly what happens to creativity. My name is Antonio Bechtle. I have a degree in literature, and for over 20 years, I worked as a creative director in advertising, one of the most demanding creative environments there is. Along the way, I won multiple awards, and for 10 years, I was head of the creativity course at an advertising school in the Baltic region. I trained over 100 creatives, many of whom are now creative directors themselves. But through all this time, the question that has always fascinated me most is not how to make better advertising. It's something more fundamental. Why do we stop being creative? And what does it take to get it back? This is why I decided to open Uncaged Creativity as a space to discuss and learn together how to free our creative mind. I think it was Picasso who said every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up. Just watch any group of children playing, and you will see creativity in its purest form. They invent games out of nothing, they draw, and they can't care less if the drawing is good. They make up stories, songs, rules, entire worlds, and they play with complete seriousness because for a child, the game is serious. The right sandwich is a completely valid idea. And then we grow up. Schools reward the right answer, not the original one. They grade conformity and punish difference. They teach us to color inside the lines, literally and figuratively. By the time we enter the working world, most of us have been thoroughly trained to suppress the impulse that comes naturally to every child, the impulse to make something new, to follow the internal logic of a game, to take the rice and make it into a sandwich. And then you see companies build brainstorm rooms with beanbags and color walls and tell their employees to be creative, as if the problem were the furniture. Spoiler alert, it isn't the furniture. The problem is that creativity was conditioned out of us, slowly and systematically over many years. And you cannot undo that with a beanbag. Something I learned after 2 decades of working with creative people is that creativity is not something you learn, it is something you unlearn your way back to. Of course, I have met people who struggled with creativity, but they were never uncreative. They are people who, somewhere along the way, were told by a parent, a teacher, a colleague, a culture that their rice sandwich was not allowed, that the game was childish, that the bottle caps should stay on the floor. There is this famous quote, paraphrasing Bernard Shaw, that says, "We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing." Now, what does it mean to live creatively for real? Most people think creativity means making art, painting, writing, doing music, and yes, it includes those things. But the deeper version of creativity is something much more fundamental. It is a way of seeing, a way of engaging with everything around you, your work, your relationships, your daily decisions, the problems you face, the conversations you have. So, this is why so many people who take piano lessons or painting classes in search of their creativity come away disappointed. The creativity was never in the craft, it was in the idea that the craft was supposed to serve. You can spend years perfecting a technique and still have nothing to say. Or you can have something urgent to say and find that almost any medium will carry it. A friend of mine once received a wooden giraffe as a housewarming gift. His apartment was small and full of things, so he screwed the giraffe to the ceiling. A poke. There. Upside down. It looked amazing. No artistic training, no technique, just a different way of seeing a problem. He refused to do the obvious. That is a creative act that communicates a lot. Imagine you arrive into his apartment for the first time and seeing a giraffe screwed to the ceiling. That immediately tells you that the person who lives there is more interesting than the average. A creative person doesn't just make things differently, they live differently. They notice what others walk past. They ask questions others don't think to ask. They find unexpected connections between things that seem completely unrelated. Creativity is not something you visit occasionally, like a place you go on weekends. It's something you inhabit, a way of being awake in your own life every day. Somewhere between childhood and adulthood, most of us made a deal. We agreed to stop taking the game seriously, to color inside the lines. And in return, we got security, respect, and the approval of people who had made the same deal before us. But creativity doesn't disappear, it just waits. Uncaged Creativity is a space for people who want to go back and reclaim it. Not necessarily to become artists, unless that's what they want, but to live more fully, think more freely, and bring more of who they actually are into everything they do. Or just to become more interesting if you want. If this resonates with you, subscribe. There is much more coming. And if you want to go deeper, you can find me at uncaged-creativity.com. I am Antonio Bextle. See you next time.